In the long list of patriarchs found in the Book of Genesis, one man breaks the cycle of dust and decay. His summary is brief, yet deeply enigmatic. The text of Genesis in chapter 5, verses 23 and 24 states, "And all the days of Enoch were 365 years, and Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him." From these few cryptic words, entire streams of hidden knowledge would flow. To the great chronologists like Scaliger, he was the master of cosmic time, the man responsible for the division of the year. To Christian mystics and Renaissance Kabbalists, his role was even more profound. They saw in him a prefiguration of Christ, a patriarch from whose sacred lineage a savior would one day be born. This elevation of Enoch is not confined to mystics and the church fathers alone. Centuries earlier, the great rationalist philosopher Baruch Spinoza also saw Enoch as a figure of profound universal importance. In his theologico-political treatise, Spinoza argued that the gift of prophecy was never exclusive to a single nation. To prove this, he points directly to the Old Testament, stating it is sufficient that we find that Gentiles and the uncircumcised, such as Enoch, Abimelech, Balaam, etc., did in fact prophesy. For Spinoza, Enoch represents a primordial universal prophet, a man who walked with God long before the establishment of any specific religious covenant. He is proof that the capacity for divine communication is a fundamental human potential, open to all people at all times. Who was this man to be elevated to such a cosmic status? And what secrets are contained within the spiritual time capsule that bears his name? The legendary Book of Enoch. The Book of Enoch is one of the oldest and most profound examples of apocalyptic literature. This was a genre born of crisis, whose name, apocalypsis, despite being associated with destruction, actually refers to a stunning revelation. It offers us a key to unlock the atmosphere at the time of Christ, to breathe the air of a world charged with messianic expectation and moral urgency. It is an echo of the beliefs and a map of the aspirations of a people across centuries, making its study not only valuable, but essential for understanding the roots of Western spirituality. This book does not stand alone. It is a ghost haunting the margins of the canonical Bible. Its themes are deeply interlinked with the Old Testament and later Jewish mystical writings, marking it as a vital voice in a grand religious conversation. Its authority was once so great that the Apostle Jude in the New Testament invoked it as binding prophecy, writing of the end times thus, "And Enoch also, the seventh from Adam, prophesied of these, saying, Behold, the Lord cometh with 10,000s of his saints, to execute judgment upon all, and to convince all that are ungodly among them of all their ungodly deeds which they have ungodly committed, and of all their hard speeches which ungodly sinners have spoken against him." The earliest fathers of the Church, men like Tertullian and Origen, were well acquainted with its pages. The fiery apologist Tertullian vigorously defended the book against its detractors, writing as follows, "But since Enoch in the same scripture has preached likewise concerning the Lord, nothing at all must be rejected by us which pertains to us, and we read that every scripture suitable for edification is divinely inspired. By the Jews it may now seem to have been rejected for that very reason, just like all the other portions nearly which tell of Christ. Nor of course is this fact wonderful, that they did not receive some scriptures which spoke of him whom even in person, speaking in their presence, they were not to receive. To these considerations is added the fact that Enoch possesses a testimony in the Apostle Jude, rejected from the Jewish canon precisely because its prophecies of Christ were so clear. The great theologian Origen likewise was steeped in its visions, confirming its unparalleled significance in the formative years of faith. And yet, after being defended at the highest levels of Christian thought, it vanished from the Western world. For 1,000 years it was a lost book, a legend whispered about, until its dramatic rediscovery in the 18th century forced history to reckon with it once more. The story of its survival is a testament to unwavering faith. While the West forgot, a sacred fire was kept burning in Africa. The complete text of Enoch survived in the ancient Ge'ez language of Ethiopia, its most reliable and whole form. The journey of the text from a probable Aramaic or Hebrew original to Greek and finally to Ge'ez, has been painstakingly verified by scholars. When fragments of the original Aramaic were found among the Dead Sea Scrolls, they acted as a Rosetta Stone, confirming the remarkable fidelity of the Ethiopic version. We are indebted to the generations of anonymous Ethiopian scribes who served as the custodians of this drowned library, and to scholars like Dillman and Hoffman, who first translated its treasures. And of course we are indebted to the Reverend George H. Shod, whose 1882 English translation from Andover provides the foundation for our exploration today. The return of Enoch to the West was nothing less than a theological earthquake. When Scottish explorer James Bruce brought 3 complete copies back from Ethiopia in 1773, he unleashed a wave of fascination that has never receded. This rediscovery spurred an academic gold rush, with a flurry of translations and critical editions emerging throughout the 19th century, each one adding new layers to our picture of it. This intense study continues to this day, as modern scholars perpetually explore the book's peculiar structure and radical ideas, forcing us to constantly re-evaluate the very origins of Christian and Jewish thought. Enoch is the titan of apocryphal works, which are the texts that were hidden away. But we must ask, was it hidden because it was false, or because its truths were too potent for the world to handle? This view of Enoch as a master of divine secrets finds a fascinating echo centuries later in the work of European alchemists. In his alchemical studies, Carl Jung explores their fundamental idea of the center, a mystical, indivisible point which is indestructible and eternal. This center, whose physical counterpart is gold, was seen as an infinite abyss of mysteries. Amazingly, Jung points out that alchemists like Gerhard Dorn, borrowing from Paracelsus, explicitly called this mystical center Enoch. Dorn wrote that, "Nothing is more like God than the center, for it occupies no space and cannot be grasped, seen or measured." In this alchemical tradition, therefore, Enoch's name becomes a symbol for the ungraspable heart of reality, the divine spark at the center of creation, the house of fire from which all spiritual transformation begins. This esoteric significance is deepened in the Gnostic tradition, where Enoch takes on the attributes of another great sage of antiquity, Hermes, the master of magic and guide of souls. In Mysterium Conjunctionis, Carl Jung discusses the agathos daimon, or good spirit, which is a snake-like, chthonic, life-giving and healing power. He reveals a stunning connection, noting that on Gnostic gems it appears together with Enoch, Enoch being an early parallel of Hermes. This identification is profound. By linking Enoch to Hermes, the Gnostics saw him as a man who ascended to heaven and as a complete sage, who understood both celestial and earthly secrets. This solidifies his image as a psychopomp, a guide for the soul through the mysteries of life, death, and transformation. A role that resonates with his alchemical association with the transformative spirit Mercurius. In this context, the Book of Enoch is a magnificent hybrid, blending familiar stories with visions so strange they were deemed dangerous. It is defined by its apocalyptic nature, seeking to pierce the veil of the divine mysteries and map the final destiny of all souls. Enoch himself is portrayed as the ultimate sage, a master of divine sciences who understood the secrets of the cosmos, the movements of the stars, and the mind of God. To read this book is to enter a cathedral of visions. It is a library of revelation bound in one cover and compiled over centuries. Its sections are distinct yet united in purpose. From the terrifying history of the fallen angels who abandoned heaven for the daughters of men, siring a race of monstrous cannibalistic giants whose stature was 3,000 ells, to the breathtaking visions of Enoch's celestial journeys, to the messianic parables of the Chosen One. The book is rich with allegory and symbolism that reveal a sacred code used to speak truth to power in a time of brutal oppression. Its architecture is built upon the foundation of the Book of Daniel, the first apocalyptic writing, but it erects a tower of its own, reaching for an even grander vision of divine justice and the establishment of an eternal kingdom. This is not a book written with ink alone, but inscribed with the blood and tears of the persecuted. It was forged in the fires of the Maccabean struggle in the 2nd century BC. a desperate war for cultural and spiritual survival against the tyranny of oppressive Greek rulers. The book is a spiritual manifesto for the Chassidim, the pious ones who chose martyrdom over abandoning their faith. It is their cry to heaven, and it is heaven's answer back, a powerful, unwavering assurance that God had not abandoned them, and that their endurance in the face of absolute despair was seen, valued, and would be vindicated. From this trial and suffering, Enoch delivers a revolutionary vision of what awaits us after death. It transforms the vague, shadowy underworld of Sheol into a celestial courthouse, providing the first detailed map of the afterlife. He describes a great mountain in the west containing 4 hollow, beautiful places, created for the spirits of the dead to assemble in. Here the souls are separated based on their righteousness and the manner of their death as they await the great day of judgment. Even more radical is its portrait of the Messiah. He is a future king, and he is a pre-existent Son of Man, a being of pure light and righteousness, who existed with God before the creation of the sun and the stars. He is the ultimate judge and the hope of all creation. A theological bridge between ancient Jewish hope and the Christology of the New Testament. The section in the Book of Enoch called the Parables is the blazing messianic heart of the entire work. Here, prophecy becomes a weapon. The focus shifts from ancient angelic sins to a direct and scathing critique of the corrupt rulers of the author's own time. The parables contrast the fleeting power of earthly kings with the eternal authority of the Chosen One. This is where the hope of the oppressed is given a face and a name, and where they are assured that the entire structure of worldly injustice will be shattered and replaced by the absolute, triumphant justice of God. Finally, the text itself shows evidence of being a living river of tradition, as later scribes inserted what we now call the Noachic fragments, seamlessly integrating the story of Noah and the Great Flood into Enoch's cosmic architecture. These additions serve a crucial purpose. They explicitly connect the world-ending flood to the sins of the fallen angels detailed earlier, and this masterfully reinforces the book's core message, that the moral and the physical realms are inseparable, and that sins committed in the heavens can unleash cataclysms upon the earth. Thank you for being here. Your support is my fire, and fire can never be described with words. What I can do as compensation is to introduce you to one of the most legendary stories ever told, the story of Enoch. With the prelude now set, we step through the gateway and into the book itself. The journey begins with a foundational declaration and a cosmic thesis statement that frames everything to come. This is Enoch's opening vision and admonition. The words of the blessing of Enoch, wherewith he blessed the chosen and just, who will exist on the day of tribulation, when all the wicked and impious shall be removed. He immediately establishes that his vision is not for his own time, but for a far-off generation which is to come. Imagine the incredible audacity. Enoch is positioning himself as a timeless sage, casting a message across the ocean of history. He then announces the source of his vision, a direct encounter with the Holy and Great One, who will come from his abode, the God of the world. This coming is a true theophany, a terrifying manifestation of divine power. God will step onto Mount Sinai, and at his arrival all will fear, and the watchers, the very angels, will tremble. The mountains will be shaken and melt like wax before a flame, and the entire earth will be submerged and judged. He will come with myriads of the holy to pass judgment upon them. This is the ultimate guarantee of everything that follows. The justice he describes is backed by the full, irresistible power of the Creator. Having established this authority, Enoch presents his core argument through a grand and powerful contrast. First, he asks us to simply observe the cosmos. He notes how the luminaries in the heavens never depart from their appointed paths, each rising and setting in its own time according to its law. He points to the earth, where summer and winter arrive in their turn, and how the trees appear to wither yet always return, bearing fruit in their season. Everything in creation, he states, is constant. It serves God and is not changed. This is Enoch's baseline reality, a universe of perfect order, a symphony of unwavering fidelity. Then he turns his gaze upon humanity and identifies the single, jarring anomaly. "But ye," he declares, "have not persevered, and have not done the commandment of the Lord, but have transgressed, and have slandered his greatness with high and hard words from your unclean mouths." This is Enoch's profound diagnosis of the human condition. In a cosmos built on law, we are the lawless. In a creation built on fidelity, we are the transgressors. This is considered a fundamental violation of the rhythm of reality. The consequences are therefore inevitable. For the hard-hearted, there will be no peace. They will curse their days, and the years of their lives will perish under an everlasting curse. But for the chosen, the outcome is the opposite. There will be light and joy and peace. Wisdom will be given to them, and they will inherit the earth, living out their days in everlasting happiness. With this opening statement, Enoch establishes his entire worldview. Justice is an unbreakable law of the cosmos, and the final judgment is simply the moment that law is fully and finally executed. And the watchers know it very well. Having established the law of the cosmos, Enoch now reveals the story of its first and most catastrophic violation. He answers the question of how a perfect creation could fall into such disarray. The answer is not a human story. It is the story of a crime that bled down from the heavens themselves. The narrative begins with a scene of profound cosmic imbalance, a mythological depiction of what Plato might have described as the soul's fall. In his Phaedrus, Plato allegorizes the soul as a chariot driver, also known as reason, struggling to control two horses, one noble and one base. The fall occurs when the base horse of appetite and lust overwhelms divine reason, dragging the soul from the intelligible realm of heaven down to the sensory world of earth. Here, in Enoch, we see this play out on a cosmic scale. "And it came to pass, after the children of men had increased in those days, beautiful and comely daughters were born to them. From the heavens, the angels, the watchers, looked down, and their divine reason was overthrown by earthly desire. They saw and lusted. This was the moment the chariot of the heavens began to fall. Their leader, Semjaza, voiced the fear of a mind still possessing a fragment of reason, stating, 'I fear that perhaps ye will not be willing to do this deed, and I alone shall suffer for this great sin.' But the collective appetite was too strong. On the summit of Mount Hermon, 200 of them swore a binding oath, sealing their rebellion with mutual curses. They descended, took wives, and began to mix with them. This was more than a transgression. It was the violation of the sacred boundary between spirit and flesh and heaven and earth. And from this profane union, a monstrous new reality was born into the world. From a Jungian perspective, these were the children of a divine psychic wound, the monstrous archetypal shadow of the Watchers made flesh. They were the Nephilim, great giants whose stature was 3,000 ells. Their existence was a cancer upon the earth, defined by an insatiable consumptive hunger. First they devoured all the acquisitions of mankind till men were unable to sustain themselves. Then, when the world of men was exhausted, the giants turned their cannibalistic hunger upon humanity. But the physical corruption was matched by a spiritual one. The fallen angels cursed humanity with forbidden knowledge, secrets that heaven had intentionally kept hidden. This was not the noble fire of a Prometheus given to elevate mankind. This was the poisoned gift of a degraded divinity, given to satisfy its own corrupt nature. The angel Azazel, in an act of profound symbolism, taught humanity the tools of its division and illusion. He taught them to make swords and knives and shields and coats of mail, introducing a technology of violence that would forever scar the earth. Simultaneously, he taught the arts of vanity, the use of rouge and the beautifying of the eyebrows, introducing a technology of superficiality and deception. From a Nietzschean view, this is the birth of a corrupt master-slave morality, the master's will to power through the sword and the slave's will to power through seductive illusion. The other angels brought sorcery, astrology, and root cuttings, accelerating human development down a path of wickedness and spiritual decay. From a psychological perspective, this catastrophic event can be understood as a myth about the violent and dangerous evolution of human consciousness. In his answer to Job, Carl Jung makes the remarkable claim that the fallen angels, particularly Azazel, acted as extraordinarily progressive elements who broadened and developed man's consciousness. He compares them to the wicked Cain, who, unlike the passive Abel, represented a form of forward-moving, if dangerous, progress. This sudden expansion of knowledge, Jung argues, led to a psychic inflation, a state of arrogant pride and disconnection from the natural order. And according to psychological law, an inflation is always threatened with a counterstroke from the unconscious, and this actually did happen in the form of the deluge. The monstrous, self-devouring giants were the symptoms of this psychic inflation, and the Great Flood was the inevitable devastating counterstroke that came to restore balance to a corrupted world. In this view, the fall of the Watchers is the story of a necessary, yet almost fatal leap in human awareness. The corruption became absolute. The world was now filled with violence, idolatry, and lust. The pain became so great that creation itself could no longer bear it. The earth, personified as a living victim, complained of the unjust ones. And as the souls of the dead cried out, their lament ascended to the very gates of heaven, where the archangels Michael, Gabriel, and the others looked down upon the carnage and carried the case for judgment before the Most High. The divine response was not a single sweeping act, but a series of precise and terrifying sentences, a demonstration that cosmic law, when violated, reasserts itself with terrible force. God first sent an angel to Noah to warn him of the coming deluge that would cleanse the world. Then the judgments upon the perpetrators began. The archangel Raphael was commanded, "Bind Azazel hand and foot, and put him in the darkness. Lay upon him rough and pointed rocks, and cover his face that he may not see the light." He was to be the scapegoat for the sins he taught. Gabriel was commanded to turn the monstrous children against their parents and each other, to lead them out, and let them loose that they may destroy each other by murder. And for the leader, Semjaza, and his companions, Michael was to deliver the sentence. After they witnessed the slaughter of their own children, they were to be bound under the hills of the earth for 70 generations, till the day of their judgment and of their end. It is here, in a profound mystical paradox, that a mortal man becomes the final actor in this divine drama. In an astonishing reversal, the fallen angels, now filled with terror and shame, could no longer raise their eyes to heaven and came to Enoch, asking him to write a petition for their forgiveness. This is the ultimate humiliation of the divine and the elevation of the human. From a mystical perspective, Enoch becomes the alchemical vessel, the humble earthbound element tasked with mediating between the corrupted divine and the absolute divine. He is the conscious ego sent to confront the fallen archetypes of the collective unconscious. Enoch writes their petition, but in a vision he is carried to the throne of God, a place of flaming fire and unbearable holiness, where the verdict is delivered to him directly. And God says to him in words that seal their fate, "Ye should petition for men, and not men for you. Their request is denied. There will be no peace for them." And in that final judgment, God reveals to Enoch the last terrible legacy of their sin. The giants, born of spirit and flesh, are now dead, but their spiritual nature means they cannot be fully annihilated. And God explains, "And now the giants, who have been begotten from body and flesh, will be called evil spirits on earth, and their dwelling places will be upon the earth. Evil spirits proceed from their bodies. They will be evil spirits upon the earth, and will be called evil spirits." This is the origin story of all demonic forces. The disembodied spirits of these monstrous, tragic beings would remain forever invisible and thirsty, to cause destruction and plague the world until the end of time. With the world now corrupted by sin, haunted by demons, and its fate sealed by a divine decree, one question remained. What did this new, broken reality look like? To find the answer, Enoch himself would have to journey to the ends of creation. From a psychological perspective, Enoch's grand tour of the cosmos can be understood as a necessary inner pilgrimage. Carl Jung, in answer to Job, posits that after the trauma of the Watcher's fall, Enoch's unconscious is vastly excited by all this, and its contents burst out in a spate of apocalyptic visions. This eruption from within, Jung argues, then causes him to undertake the peregrinatio, a sacred journey to map the unseen world. This journey is a structured exploration to the four quarters of heaven and to the center of the earth. And in doing so, Jung says, Enoch draws a mandala with his own movements. The path of his travel literally creates the sacred symbol of psychic wholeness. His journey is therefore a parallel to the journeys of the alchemistic philosophers, an inner quest to map the psychic cosmos, and in the very process to find and create the integrated self. After witnessing the celestial crime and the divine decree of judgment, Enoch's journey transforms. He is no longer just a scribe or a prophet receiving messages. He becomes a cosmic explorer, the first great traveler of the unseen realms. He is taken on a guided tour of the architecture of creation, a journey that reads like a mystical travelogue from the very ends of the earth. The angels took him to a place where the heavenly beings appeared as images like flaming fire, and then to the place of the whirlwind, to a mountain peak that reached into heaven. A profound cosmography, a map of the hidden structure of reality. He is shown the repositories of the lightning and thunder, the cornerstone of the earth, and the four winds that support the firmament like pillars of heaven, and the paths upon which the angels themselves travel. Enoch becomes a scientist of the divine, an astronaut of the spirit, cataloguing the mechanics of creation. On this journey, he is shown the architecture of divine justice. He sees two terrifying prisons. The first is for the stars that transgressed the command of God before their rising, because they did not come forth in their time. Even stars in this ordered universe are held morally accountable for their timeliness. They are bound in a void place, a prison for the host of heaven, but he is then taken to another place, still more terrible, an abyss of fire, the final prison for the fallen angels themselves, where they are to be held for eternity. In psychology and alchemy, the psychoanalyst Carl Jung identifies a powerful and ancient archetype, the theme of the fire mountain. Jung notes that in Enoch's vision, the seven stars chained like great mountains and burning with fire are the condemned angels. He suggests these figures evolved from the seven great gods of Babylon, transformed here into the seven archons, the fallen rulers of the material world awaiting their punishment. The mountain of fire, in this sense, is a place of divine judgment, a celestial hell. But as Jung points out, this menacing theme is balanced by its opposite. The number 7 and the image of the holy mountain also point toward salvation. For it is on the seventh mountain that Enoch discovers the tree of life, the Arbor Sapientiae, or tree of wisdom. In this we can see what Jung would call a coincidentia oppositorum, or a union of opposites. The fiery mountain is a single, powerful symbol that contains both damnation and redemption, the abyss of the fall and the peak of spiritual attainment. Having witnessed the places of eternal punishment, Enoch is then brought west to a great and high mountain of hard rock, within which he is shown the secrets of the afterlife. This is perhaps Enoch's most revolutionary vision. Before this, the Hebrew underworld, Sheol, was a vague and shadowy place. Enoch transforms it, providing the first detailed map of the soul's domain. In this, his work bears a striking resemblance to Plato's myth of which also describes a detailed sorting of souls after death. Enoch is shown 4 beautiful places, hollowed out for the spirits of the dead. This is a celestial courthouse, a bureaucratic sorting of souls. He learns that these apartments are made to separate the dead, one for the martyrs who cry out for vengeance, like the spirit of Abel, a second for the other righteous souls who await their reward, a third for the sinners who died without judgment and now face great affliction, and a fourth for those who were already punished in life and will not be judged again, but will also not be taken from there. This detailed 4-part structure of the underworld is more than just a theological innovation. From a psychological viewpoint, it is a profound symbol of wholeness. Carl Jung argues that with this vision, we enter into a definitely psychological realm, namely that of mandala symbolism. He identifies Enoch's 4-chambered Sheol as a chthonic quaternity, namely a fourfold structure representing the underworld and the unconscious. This earthly quaternity, Jung explains, stands in everlasting contrast to a pneumatic or heavenly one, which is the fourfold nature of God that we see in the four archangels. In alchemy, this same duality is seen in the four base elements versus the perfected fourfold nature of the spirit. Therefore, Enoch's vision of Sheol is a mandala of the lower half of reality, a symbolic depiction of the complete structured nature of the unconscious realm, which must be confronted and understood before one can ascend to the holy mountains. After this tour of the complex world of the dead, Enoch is shown the ultimate promise reserved for the living. He travels to a place of 7 magnificent mountains, more beautiful than any on earth. And there, amongst fragrant trees, stands one tree of such beauty and unique fragrance that its fruit is reserved for the great judgment. His angelic guide, Michael, explains its purpose. From its fruits, life will be given to the chosen. It will be planted towards the north, in a holy place, towards the house of the Lord, the eternal King. Having seen the full spectrum of divine justice from the prisons of the fallen to the sorting of souls to the final reward of the tree of life, Enoch has now mapped not just the physical cosmos, but the entire moral and spiritual landscape of reality. Beyond the promise of the tree of life, Enoch is also shown another, more mysterious tree, the tree of wisdom. It is here that the symbolism deepens, touching upon the core mysteries of alchemy. Carl Jung illuminates this connection, explaining that the fruit of such a tree in these traditions is a miraculous spiritual food, a substance representing death and renewal. He finds it highly significant that in the Book of Enoch, the fruits of the tree of wisdom are likened to grapes, because in the Middle Ages, the alchemical philosophical tree was sometimes called a vine, creating a symbolic link to the true vine of the Gospels. This knowledge is paradoxical and profound. As the alchemist Pseudo-Aristotle wrote of a similar fruit, "Gather the fruits, for the fruit of this tree has led us into the darkness and through the darkness." The tree of wisdom, therefore, offers a more difficult path. It represents a Gnostic or alchemical truth. The true spiritual transformation comes not from a simple gift of life, but from consuming a dangerous knowledge that leads one through darkness to achieve a higher state of being. This connection to a difficult transformative knowledge is deepened when we consider what Carl Jung calls the feminine maternal nature of the tree in its relation to sapientia, or divine wisdom. He draws our attention to the Gnostics, who saw the tree of wisdom as the embodiment of knowledge itself. In the Gnostic myth of the Barbeliots, the perfect man Adamus and perfect knowledge, or gnosis, are created together. Then, as Jung explains, from the perfect man and gnosis is born the tree, which they also call gnosis. In this tradition, the tree is not a source of wisdom, it is wisdom itself. Other texts, like the Acta Archelae, make this link even more explicit, stating, "But that tree which is in paradise, whereby the good is known, is Jesus and the knowledge of him which is in the world." Thus, the tree of wisdom in Enoch represents a profound mystical secret. The ultimate reward for the righteous is an initiation into divine consciousness itself, a direct partaking in the Gnostic truth that is both the source and the substance of salvation. The location of this sacred tree upon a high mountain is itself deeply symbolic, a recurring motif in mystical traditions. Carl Jung, in his alchemical studies, notes that the imagery from the Book of Enoch was often taken as a model for this very theme. He explains that the relationship between the tree and the mountain is not accidental, but springs from an original and widespread identity between them. According to Jung, both are used by the shaman for the purpose of his heavenly journey, representing the axis mundi, the cosmic pillar connecting heaven and earth, which the mystic must ascend. On an even deeper level, Jung states that mountain and tree are symbols of the personality and of the self. Therefore, Enoch's arrival at the tree on the 7th mountain is a symbolic arrival at the spiritual axis of the world and, simultaneously, the discovery of the archetypal self, the symbol of the whole and perfected individual. But a map is only a picture of the territory. To truly understand it, one must learn the laws by which it is governed. And so Enoch's journey moves from geography to theology, from the what of creation to the why of divine justice. Having journeyed through the architecture of heaven and the geography of the afterlife, Enoch is now granted a deeper revelation. He moves from the what to the why, from the structure of the cosmos to the nature of the divine law that underpins it. The vision begins with a profound diagnosis of the human condition, a myth that resonates with both Platonic and Gnostic thought. Wisdom, Enoch says, came to dwell among the children of men and found no dwelling place. Wisdom returned to her place and took her seat among the angels. Humanity rejected the very principle of divine order. Into this vacuum, injustice came forth from its repository and dwelt with them, like the rain in the desert and like dew in the thirsty land. But if wisdom found no home in the hearts of men, Enoch learns that its signature is written everywhere else, more precisely, in the physical world. He is shown the secrets of the lightning and of the thunder, and learns that they are not random forces, but flash for a blessing and for a curse, as the Lord of the Spirits desired. He sees the closed repositories, and from them the winds are divided out, and understands that every natural phenomenon, from the dew to the clouds, has a purpose and proceeds from a divine source. For Enoch, natural philosophy is a form of theology. The laws of nature are a moral text revealing the will of God. Nowhere is this connection between the cosmos and the soul made more explicit than in his vision of the stars. In a moment of stunning mystical insight, Enoch sees the stars of heaven and learns that God called them all by their names, and they heard him. They are weighed on the scales of justice according to their light. Then the guiding angel reveals the core of the mystery. The Lord of the Spirits has showed thee a picture of them. These are the names of the just, who dwell on the earth and believe on the name of the Lord of the Spirits to all eternity. This is a deeply Platonic concept. The righteous souls on earth are living reflections of their perfect, archetypal counterparts in the heavens. Each just person has a star, a celestial double, whose light is measured and accounted for in the great cosmic ledger. And this entire system of cosmic and moral law is administered by a celestial court. Before the throne of God, Enoch sees 4 holy angels, each with a specific function. He learns their names and sacred tasks from the angel of peace. The first is the holy Michael, merciful, slow to anger, and the second, who is over all sicknesses and over all the wounds of the children of men, is Raphael, and the third, who is over all the powers, is the holy Gabriel, and the fourth, who is over penitence and the hope of those who inherit everlasting life, is Phanuel. This vision of a divine bureaucracy, where justice is tempered with mercy, healing and hope, is already profound. Yet a psychological interpretation reveals an even deeper drama. Carl Jung, in his answer to Job, argues that this essential differentiation of the God image is a direct result of God learning from the traumatic experience with Job. To prevent further experiments after the style of the Job episode, God has really learnt something and is setting about things more consciously than before. Jung sees these 4 angels as nothing less than the 4 faces of God, 4 hypostases or emanations that represent the core aspects of the now more conscious divine personality. He notes that while 3 of the angels perform holy or beneficial functions, the 4th, Phanuel, is also a militant figure who has to keep Satan at bay. This reveals a stunning inner tension. While Phanuel is the angel of hope and penitence for humanity, he must simultaneously fight off the Satans who, as Jung clarifies, still dwell in the heavenly regions since the fall of Satan has not yet occurred. They are the heavenly accusers, a legitimate, if adversarial, part of the divine council. Thus, the vision in Enoch is a vision of the evolved God image itself, a complex fourfold reality that has learned from experience and has structured itself to express mercy, healing and power, while actively managing its own internal adversarial nature. This vision of the 4 great angels forming God's inner court finds a dark echo in the apocalyptic work of another great seer, Daniel. In alchemical studies, Carl Jung draws a direct psychological line between them, interpreting the four beasts that rise from the sea in the Book of Daniel as the shadow aspect of these very same angelic powers. He writes that in Daniel's vision, these are functions that have succumbed to desire, lost their angelic character, and become demonic in the worst sense. They represent the negative and destructive aspect of the four angels of God, who, as the Book of Enoch shows, form his inner court. This demonization, as Jung calls it, is the result of a monstrous lust for power. Seen through this lens, the corruption of the earthly kings and mighty ones, so fiercely condemned throughout Enoch, is a mirror of this celestial shadow. Their lust for power is a worldly manifestation of the same demonic force that Daniel saw in his vision of the four beasts. The power of this divine quaternity, this fourfold structure of God's inner court, can be seen as a foundational archetype that existed far beyond the pages of Enoch. Carl Jung argues that it was via Daniel and Enoch that the quaternity of God's sons penetrated very early into Christian ideology. He notes that this pattern found its expression in the four Gospels, which were seen as the pillars of Christ's throne. But it was Gnostic speculation, Jung asserts, that in particular appropriated the quaternity. The Gnostics, for example, conceived of Christ himself as a fourfold being. Jung cites the Valentinians, who taught that our Lord in his fourfoldness is composed of 1, the spiritual, 2, the psychic, 3, the body, and 4, the divine, the Saviour. Thus, the vision of the four angels standing before the throne was a mystical blueprint that helped reorient how later traditions would conceive of their Gospels, their symbols, and the nature of their Saviour. Ultimately, this divine order culminates in a final, irrevocable judgment. Enoch sees a vision where the deeds of men are weighed upon scales. For the sinners who denied the name of the Lord of Spirits, there is no escape. They are dragged away from the dwellings of the holy with no rest from their punishment. On that day, the mighty kings will perish and will be given over into the hands of the just and holy. Once this judgment is passed, Enoch is told, no mercy can be sought, for their lives have ended. Yet the final purpose of this grand, ordered system is not destruction, but the establishment of a perfect, holy habitation. Enoch sees the final dwelling place for those who are vindicated by the scales of justice. He sees their homes with the angels and their resting places with the holy, under the protective wings of the Lord of the Spirits. Their mouths are full of blessings, and their lips praise the name of the Lord of the Spirits. Seeing this, a deep longing fills Enoch himself, and he understands that this has always been his true home, saying, "Here my portion has been before, for such is established concerning me before the Lord of the Spirits." The journey through the divine order ends with this ultimate promise, a return to a state of perfect alignment, where the righteous soul finds its designated place in the eternal light and peace of God's presence. This vision answered the question of the soul's final destiny, but it raised another, even more profound question. Who would be the ultimate agent of this great judgment? Who could wield such authority? The answer would come to Enoch in his next and most radical vision, the parables of the chosen one. We now arrive at the blazing, messianic heart of the Book of Enoch. After mapping the architecture of the cosmos and the afterlife, Enoch is granted what he calls the second vision of wisdom, a series of 3 parables that shift the focus from the ancient crimes of fallen angels to the immediate sins of the powerful on earth, transforming the book into a direct theological weapon against the corrupt rulers of the author's own time. The vision opens before the throne of God, who is called the Head of Days, his head white like wool. But Enoch sees he is not alone. With him is another being whose countenance was like the appearance of a man, and his countenance was full of agreeableness, like one of the holy angels. This is the central figure of the parables, the Son of Man. The guiding angel reveals his identity, saying, "This is the Son of Man who has justice, and justice dwells with him, and all the treasures of secrecy he reveals, because the Lord of the Spirits has chosen him." The Son of Man is more than a future king and a human prophet. Enoch reveals a theological concept of breathtaking radicality. The Messiah is a pre-existent cosmic being. The text states that at that very hour, that Son of Man was called near the Lord of the Spirits, and before the sun and the signs were created, before the stars of heaven were made, his name was called before the Lord of the Spirits. This is a profound metaphysical claim. From a Platonic perspective, the Son of Man is the eternal archetypal form of justice itself, existing in the perfect, intelligible realm with God before time began. From a Jungian view, he is the archetype of the self, the symbol of psychic wholeness that exists a priori in the collective unconscious, waiting for the moment of ultimate integration. He is a fundamental principle of reality. In his work, Alchemical Studies, Carl Jung identifies Enoch's Son of Man as a manifestation of a profound and universal archetype, the anthropos, or primordial man. Jung explains that ancient traditions across the world assert that the world-creating principle was made manifest in the form of a first created, protoplastus, man, usually of cosmic size. This is the original, perfect, spiritual human who acts as the blueprint for creation and the agent of its ultimate redemption. Jung finds this figure in India as Purusha, in Persia as the dazzlingly white Gayomart, and in the Jewish mystical tradition of the Zohar as the great angel Metatron, who was created together with light. Crucially, Jung states that this Metatron figure is precisely the celestial man whom we meet in the visions of Enoch. Therefore, when Enoch sees the Son of Man, he is not just seeing a future Jewish king, but tapping into a deep mystical archetype of a divine cosmic person who holds the key to the meaning of all creation. But why is there such a relentless focus on the righteousness of this chosen one? Why is justice his defining attribute? Here, in his most daring theological work, Answer to Job, Carl Jung offers an incredible explanation. He suggests the author of Enoch was so much under the influence of the divine drama, so gripped by it, that one could almost suppose he had a quite special understanding of the coming incarnation. Jung's core thesis is that the Son of Man was conceived as a psychological and moral necessity. He writes, "It is probably no accident that so much stress is laid on righteousness, for it is the one quality that Yahweh lacks, a fact that could hardly have remained hidden from such a man as the author of the Book of Enoch." In this revolutionary view, the Son of Man is the necessary evolution of the God image. He is designed to compensate for the moral ambiguity and terrifying amorality that the Old Testament God displayed in stories like the Book of Job. The Son of Man possesses an inexhaustible fountain of righteousness precisely because that is the quality needed to heal the relationship between the divine and the human. He is not just a ruler, he is the perfected image of God. A divine figure who is now consciously and completely aligned with the very justice that his Father was still struggling to understand. The revelation of the Son of Man in Enoch is the direct fulfillment of the spiritual crisis experienced by Job. As Jung explains in Answer to Job, Job's suffering was so immense and God's injustice so profound that it created an incompatibility which the figure of Yahweh presents to the religious consciousness. Job, in his darkest moment, could only cry out in hope for a divine defender, declaring, "I know that my vindicator lives." Jung argues that the traditional Christian interpretation of this passage as an anticipation of Christ is correct, because Yahweh's benevolent aspect incarnates itself as its own hypostasis in the Son of Man. The Son of Man is the revealed vindicator. While Job could only hope for this figure, Enoch, in his ecstasy, recognizes himself as the Son of Man, directly experiencing the godlike elevation that Job could only infer. The divine drama thus comes full circle. As Jung states, just as Satan plays the role of accuser and slanderer, so Christ, God's other Son, plays the role of advocate and defender. The Son of Man in Enoch is the first full revelation of this divine advocate, the necessary counterweight to the darkness, born from the suffering of a righteous man. This chosen one embodies the full spectrum of divine justice, serving a dual function. For the wicked, he is a terrifying judge who will arouse the kings and mighty from their couches and the strong from their thrones, and expel the kings from their thrones and from their kingdoms, because they do not exalt him and praise him. But for the righteous, he is the ultimate source of stability and hope. He will be a staff to the just and the holy, upon which they will support themselves and not fall, and he will be the light of the nations, and he will be the hope of those who are sick in their hearts. Enoch then sees the catalyst for this great judgment. It is a direct response to the suffering of the faithful. He sees how the prayer of the just and the blood of the just one ascend from the earth before the Lord of the spirits. The holy ones in heaven unite their voices with these earthly prayers, petitioning that justice be done and that the suffering of the righteous not be in vain. This presents a key mystical concept. Human prayer is an active force that can move the heavens and set the mechanism of divine judgment into motion. And the result of that judgment is a total transformation of reality. God himself declares, "And on that day I will cause my chosen one to dwell among them, and will transform heaven and make it a blessing and a light eternally. And I will transform the earth and make it a blessing, and will cause my chosen ones to dwell thereon." In this new creation, cleansed of all evil, those who have committed sin will not be allowed to step on it, and the just will dwell in a kingdom of eternal light and peace, ruled by their divine King for all eternity. The vision of the Messianic kingdom was the ultimate promise, but a promise is one thing, and its fulfillment is another. Enoch was now shown the final, secret details of how this new world would be born from the old. These details are the mechanics of the end times. Enoch is now granted a vision of the end itself, the final act of the great cosmic drama. He is shown the secrets of the end times, the mechanics of the final judgment, and the ultimate fate of all souls. This is portrayed as an inevitable and certain time of reckoning for both the righteous and the wicked, with immense consequences for their actions. The judgment begins with an event of unimaginable scale, a universal resurrection. This is the ultimate audit of all creation, a moment when nothing remains hidden and no soul is lost. Enoch is told that on that day the earth will return that entrusted to it, and Sheol will return that entrusted to it which it has received, and hell will return what it owes. From this great and terrible assembly of all who have ever lived, the chosen one, who has been given authority over all, will execute the judgment, choosing the just for salvation and condemning the wicked to utter destruction. The visions of the end times also reveal the deepest secrets of the natural world, showing that the physical cosmos is a moral text reflecting the will of God. The moral implications of justice and righteousness are reinforced by how cosmic phenomena operate. Enoch is shown the secrets of the lightning and of the thunder, and learns that they are instruments of God's judgment that flash for a blessing and for a curse, as the Lord of the spirits desired. The just, in their wisdom, are able to perceive this divine order, while the wicked remain blind to it. This connection between the physical and spiritual realms demonstrates that for Enoch, there is no division between physics and ethics. The laws of nature and the laws of justice are one and the same. As part of this revelation, Enoch experiences a vision of two primordial beings created as part of God's plan for the end. These creatures symbolize the untamed, dualistic forces of creation now being brought into the service of the final judgment. As the heavens shake and the angels are disturbed, Enoch sees the head of days on his throne and witnesses the creation of two monsters, a female monster named Leviathan, to dwell in the depth of the sea over the fountains of the waters. But the masculine is named Behemoth, who occupies with his breast a void desert. From a Jungian perspective, these are the great archetypes of chaos, the watery abyss and the barren wasteland, now harnessed for a divine purpose. The text reveals that this final judgment is a covenant for the chosen and a test for the sinners, where even the most monstrous and chaotic elements of the cosmos are made to serve the execution of perfect justice. This connection between the natural world and divine will is further elaborated as Enoch is shown the roles of angels in governing creation. He learns that every natural phenomenon has a corresponding spirit or angel that guides its function. The vision details how various spirits control the elements, from the repositories of the winds to the treasuries of hail, fog, rain and dew. This is a vision of a living, ensouled cosmos, where nothing is inanimate. In this system, angels are even tasked with a moral purpose, taking long cords to go out and measure the portions of the just and support them. This illustrates a universe that is not a machine of dead matter, but a living, hierarchical system, divinely administered in every detail. Enoch's vision then confirms the ultimate fate of the righteous, emphasizing the importance of their faith. After the judgment, the chosen will be rewarded and will dwell with the chosen, forever freed from the presence of the unjust. The judgment will reveal the secrets of the depths and the paths of the just, and they will be saved, never again to see the faces of the sinners. In the final kingdom, the Lord of the spirits will dwell over them, and they will live in eternal peace with the Son of Man. In stark contrast, the text describes the horrifying fate of the wicked, particularly the kings and the powerful who ruled the earth. During the judgment, they will see the chosen one on his throne and be seized with a pain so great it is like a woman who is in travail. They will finally acknowledge the truth, but their recognition comes too late. They will petition the angels of punishment for just a little rest, so that they could fall down and worship before the Lord of the spirits and could acknowledge their sins before him. Their plea is denied. They are delivered into the hands of the angels of punishment who take vengeance upon them. Their end is one of eternal shame and darkness, where they become a spectacle for the just and for his chosen, who rejoice over the final execution of God's wrath. The culmination of these visions is Enoch's own final transformation, an apotheosis that solidifies his role as the great mediator between humanity and God. His spirit ascends into the heaven of heavens, where he witnesses the unbearable glory of the divine throne, surrounded by thousands upon thousands of angels. His own spirit is changed, his flesh melts, and the head of days himself approaches. An angel then greets him with a stunning revelation saying, "Thou art a son of man who was born to justice, and justice dwells over thee." In this final, breathtaking moment, the observer merges with the observed. The man who chronicled the coming of the Son of Man is now addressed with that title, unified with the messianic archetype he was shown, becoming the ultimate symbol of the righteous human who walked with God. This final transformation of Enoch into the Son of Man is more than just a personal reward. From a Jungian perspective, it is a pivotal moment in the evolution of the God image itself. In answer to Job, Jung explains that while the title Son of Man was a dark and enigmatic hint in older prophets like Ezekiel, in this vision its meaning becomes clear. Enoch, he writes, is not only the recipient of divine revelation, but is at the same time a participant in the divine drama, as though he were at least one of the sons of God himself. This leads to Jung's central, radical insight. In the same measure as God sets out to become man, man is immersed in the pleromatic process. In other words, as God prepares for his own incarnation into humanity, humanity, in the figure of Enoch, is simultaneously being drawn up into the life of God. Enoch becomes the archetype of the man who is baptized in the divine mystery and is made to participate in the divine quaternity, a process Jung equates with being mystically crucified with Christ. As a final warning and a sober reminder of the source of the world's corruption, the book provides a detailed list of the names of the fallen angels and their specific transgressions. It names the leaders, such as Semjaza, the first among them, Asbiel, who taught the wicked device, Gadriel, who revealed the instruments of death to mankind, and Penemu, who taught the sons of men the bitter and the sweet, and the art of writing, which led to sin. Each name is associated with a specific corruption that was unleashed upon the earth. This catalogue serves as a final admonition, emphasizing that the chaos of the world has a specific celestial origin, and that all who stray from the divine path, angel or man, are ultimately subject to a final inescapable judgment. And having been unified with this divine principle of justice, Enoch was now shown its most tangible and irrefutable proof on earth. The unchangeable, incorruptible laws written not in a book of Revelation, but in the very movements of the sun, the moon, and the stars. Having been shown the secrets of judgment and the vision of the Chosen One, Enoch's journey now returns to the theme of his opening vision, the perfect and unswerving order of the physical universe. This next section can be understood as a form of sacred science. It is not modern astronomy, but rather a mystical mathematics, a detailed effort to prove that the cosmos is a rational, predictable, and law-abiding system, presenting a constant silent rebuke to the chaos of the fallen world. This revelation is given to Enoch by the holy angel Uriel, who was placed by God as the leader over all the luminaries of heaven. Uriel describes the laws governing the sun, moon, and stars, detailing the portals through which they pass. He shows Enoch 6 portals, out of which the sun ascends, and 6 portals into which the sun descends, located in the east and west, respectively. The sun's yearly circuit through these portals completes a perfect 364-day cycle, a number divisible by 7, suggesting a calendar in perfect harmony with sacred time. The moon too rises and sets in these same portals. Its light is revealed to be a reflection of the sun's, receiving a 7th part of the light of the sun when it is full, and its phases are described with mathematical precision as it completes its cycle over a lunar month. This is a vision of a clockwork universe, where time itself is holy and obedient. This detailed focus on a perfect sacred calendar touches upon a deep mystical tradition concerning the source of Enoch's authority. While the book states that the angel Uriel revealed these secrets, other esoteric traditions suggest an even more ancient origin. A key Latin text mentioned by Jung in Mysterium Conjunctionis states, Adam tradidit Enocho, qui introductus in mysterium embolismi intercalavit annum. That is, Adam handed down to Enoch, who, having been introduced into the mystery of the embolism, intercalated the year. The mystery of the embolism refers to the secret knowledge of intercalation, the sacred mathematics required to harmonize the cycles of the sun and moon. This tradition suggests that Enoch's mastery of time was a primeval wisdom passed in a direct lineage from the first man, Adam himself. He is thus portrayed as the chosen heir to humanity's original, uncorrupted understanding of the cosmic order. The divine order extends beyond the luminaries to the very air itself. Enoch is shown the 12 portals opened for all the winds at the ends of the earth. Uriel explains that there are 3 portals for each cardinal direction, but that their effect is not uniform. This is where the physical order reveals its moral dimension. Through 4 of these, he is told, come winds of blessing and of peace, and through those 8 come winds of injury. For example, from the middle portal in the east comes a temperate wind bringing rain and fruitfulness and peace and dew, while from the portal just south of it comes a wind of destruction, dryness, and heat and death. In this worldview, nothing is random. The winds are dispatched from specific gates with a divine purpose, acting as instruments of either heavenly blessing or heavenly retribution. Finally, Enoch is initiated into an even deeper level of esoteric knowledge, the secret names of the luminaries. In ancient and mystical traditions, to know the true name of a being or a force is to understand its essential nature. Uriel reveals the sun's 2 names, the first Oriares, the second Thomas, and the moon's 4 names, first Asonia, the second Ebla, the third Benesse, the fourth Erai. These names, likely derived from Hebrew or Aramaic words for light and the moon, represent the final layer of this sacred science. By learning them, Enoch is shown that the universe is not only orderly, but also intelligible. Its deepest secrets can be known, and its essence can be understood by the one who walks with God. This astronomical book thus serves as the ultimate proof of the story's foundational theme, that all of creation remains faithful to its given laws, providing the unchangeable standard against which the sins of angels and men are measured. With this cosmic law-abiding standard now established as the ultimate measure of reality, Enoch is granted one final, epic dream vision. A chance to see how all of human history, from the first man to the final judgment, measures up against this perfect divine law. Before Enoch unveils his grand historical vision, he first recounts two preliminary visions that frame his purpose. He explains that these came to him in his youth, one foretelling a great destruction where the heavens were lowered and disappeared and fell on the earth, and the other prompting him to pray as an intercessor for all of humanity. In these visions, he saw the earth being devoured in a great abyss, a powerful symbol for the consequences of sin. This establishes his role as a deeply concerned patriarch, petitioning God for mercy and the preservation of a righteous remnant. His entire prophetic mission is thus born from a place of compassion and a desire to save what can be saved from the coming judgment. Having received this immense wisdom, Enoch understands that it is not for him alone. A core part of this section is his emphasis on the sacred transmission of knowledge. He calls to his son, instructing him, "Preserve, my son Methuselah, the books from the hand of thy father, and give them to the generations of the world." This act is crucial. It underscores the belief that divine wisdom is a treasure to be guarded and passed down. A chain of tradition connecting the ancient patriarchs to all future generations. This knowledge, Enoch says, is a wisdom above their thoughts, an essential guide for righteous living that must be preserved to steer humanity through the dark times ahead. Then, Enoch shares the main vision, the great prophetic dream that allegorically depicts the entire history of humanity. From a Jungian perspective, this is a journey into the collective unconscious, where history unfolds as a drama between archetypal animal symbols. The dream begins with a bullock that came out of the earth. This was Adam. He was white, the color of purity. He was joined by a female of the same species, Eve, and from them came two more, a black one, representing the shadow of Cain, and a red one, symbolizing the martyrdom of Abel. The first act of world history is then depicted with stark simplicity, and that black one horned the red one. After this, the vision shows the first cow, Eve, raising a great cry and searching for the red bullock she had lost. She is comforted by the first bullock, Adam, and after this, she brought forth another white bullock. This is Seth, the new hope for the righteous line. This act begins the long and tragic narrative of sin and violence, showing the moral decline of humanity as the corrupt line of Cain, the black bullocks, grows and comes into conflict with the new righteous line of Seth. The dream then retells the story of the Watchers in this new symbolic language, showing how celestial corruption infects the earthly herd. Enoch sees a star fall from heaven, and this star arose and ate and pastured among those bullocks. This single fallen star, Azazel, is soon followed by many others. The text describes how these fallen stars began to mount the cows of the bullocks, and these all became pregnant and brought forth elephants and camels and asses, the monstrous and unnatural giants. In the vision, 4 white men, the archangels, descend to enact judgment, binding the fallen star and casting him into an abyss, and handing the judgment of the 70 corrupt shepherds, the guardian angels who failed to protect Israel, over to God. The vision includes a symbolic depiction of the Great Flood as a divine reset. A white bullock, Noah, is taught a mystery by an angel. He is born a bullock and became a man, signifying a moment where a righteous individual must rise to a new level of consciousness to act. He builds a large vessel to survive the deluge that covers the entire earth and destroys all the other animals. After the waters recede, the nations of the world emerge from his 3 sons, who are symbolized as a white, a red, and a black bullock, representing the lineages of Shem, Japheth, and Ham. The allegory then races through the history of Israel. The chosen people are now sheep, and their oppressors are wild beasts. They are tormented by lions and tigers, symbols for Assyrians and Babylonians, and later by birds of prey like eagles and crows, symbols for Greeks and Syrians. In the darkest period of this oppression, during the Greek era, the text transitions to the Maccabean period. The faithful who resist are depicted as small lambs, who begin to open their eyes. From among them, a great horn came forth, a clear symbol of the great warrior, Judas Maccabi. The vision portrays his struggle against the enemies of Israel, culminating in the promise of a final victory and the establishment of a new purified Jerusalem where the faithful will be rewarded. The grand vision concludes with the scene of the final judgment. The 70 corrupt shepherds and the blinded, unfaithful sheep are judged and cast into an abyss of fire. The old defiled house is removed, and the Lord of the sheep produces a new house, larger and higher than that first, a symbol of the restored and glorified New Jerusalem. All the righteous who were scattered or destroyed are gathered into this new house. Their eyes are opened, and they are transformed into a unified flock of white bullocks, living in a state of spiritual enlightenment. The animal apocalypse, which began with a single act of violence, thus ends with a promise of total restoration, divine favor, and eternal peace. The grand prophetic arc of history was now revealed, but cosmic visions mean little if they do not change how one lives. And so, in his final major revelation, Enoch brings all this heavenly wisdom down to earth, offering it to his own children as a practical guide for righteousness in a world drowning in sin. In the final major section of his revelations, Enoch brings his cosmic visions down to earth. After the grand tours of heaven and hell, the historical allegories and the messianic parables, the book becomes an intimate and urgent ethical guide. This is Enoch's last will and testament, his final admonitions to his children on how to live a righteous life in a world saturated with sin. The scene is deeply personal. Enoch instructs his son Methuselah to gather his family, to assemble all the children of his mother, because the Spirit is poured out over me, that I show you all that will happen to you to eternity. With his kin gathered, he imparts his core wisdom, pleading with them as a father. Hear, my children, all the words of your father. Love rectitude and walk in it. He warns them that a time of great oppression is coming, a period when injustice will seem to be triumphant. In such a time, he teaches, justice itself must be their closest companion, their guide through the darkness. To give weight to his warnings, Enoch outlines a prophetic vision of the future, this time structured as 10 world weeks, a grand 10-act play of history. He charts the course of time from his own birth in the first week, through the first end of the great flood in the second, the choice of Abraham as a plant of the judgment of justice in the third, and the giving of the law at Sinai in the fourth. He continues through the building of the temple in the fifth week, its destruction and the subsequent spiritual blindness in the sixth, and the rebellious generation of his own time in the seventh. But this history of decline is meant to give hope, for it culminates in a future triumph. He prophesies an 8th week, that of justice, when the sword is given to the righteous, and a 9th week, when the judgment of justice will be revealed to all the world, leading to the final judgment and the creation of a new heaven. Having laid out this map of time, Enoch presents his children with a clear and fundamental choice, a theme central to all wisdom literature. He shows them two paths, the path of justice and the path of oppression. He urges them to choose righteousness, encouraging a life of peace, and warning that the way of sin leads only to suffering and eventual destruction. In Enoch's philosophy, this is the essential human choice, and on it hang all eternal consequences. Adherence to the teachings of wisdom is the only path to life. The Admonition then becomes a fiery polemic against the social injustices of his era, particularly a critique of the corrupting power of wealth. He cries out, "Woe to you rich, for ye have trusted in your riches. But ye will come away from your riches, because ye have not remembered the Most High in the days of your riches." In Enoch's view, this reliance on wealth is a form of idolatry, a false security for sinners who acquire their gold through injustice. He warns them that this material power is an illusion, that their treasures will not save them from the coming judgment, and that their ultimate fate will be destruction. True value, he insists, is found only in righteousness. Finally, after these sharp warnings, Enoch turns to the righteous themselves with a message of profound reassurance. He acknowledges their suffering in the face of persecution and contrasts their ultimate destiny with the fate of the wicked. For those who feel abandoned and crushed, he offers this eternal hope. The souls of the just who have died will live on, and their remembrance will be before the face of the Great One to all the generations of eternity. He encourages the faithful to maintain hope, even when their lives are filled with earthly struggle, for their temporary suffering will be redeemed with an everlasting reward. while their powerful oppressors face only shame and eternal punishment. This eternal choice between a life of righteousness and a life of sin, between ultimate reward and ultimate punishment, hinges on a single crucial element that Enoch now stresses above all others: the pursuit of true wisdom. Here, at the culmination of his teachings, Enoch stresses that the foundation of a righteous life is the pursuit of true wisdom. This is a classic Platonic and Gnostic theme. Salvation is inextricably linked to knowledge, or gnosis. He warns his descendants against the folly of ignoring divine truths, predicting that sinners will arise who write down words of untruth and words of the impious in order to make wisdom wicked. He portrays true wisdom as essential for understanding the nature of justice, crying, "Woe to you fools, for ye will be destroyed by your foolishness, and you do not listen to the wise." In this view, ignorance is not a passive state, but an active choice that leads to destruction. In contrast is the blessing reserved for those who choose the second path. "Blessed are all they who receive the words of wisdom and know them, and do the paths of the Most High." The ultimate promise to the righteous is therefore not just one of peace, but of enlightenment. Enoch reveals a final mystery that in the end times, books will be given to just and to the wise for joy and for rectitude and for much wisdom, and the books will be given to them, and they will believe in them and will rejoice in them. And what are these sacred books promised to the wise? The Gnostic tradition offers a remarkable answer in the text of the Pistis Sophia. In this work, the resurrected Jesus reveals that it was he who commanded Enoch in paradise to write down the supreme revelations spoken from the tree of knowledge and from the tree of life. These sacred writings, called the Books of Enoch, were then hidden by Enoch in the rock of Ararat, under angelic protection to preserve them from the great flood, awaiting a future time of revelation. This tradition elevates Enoch's wisdom to the highest possible level. It is a primeval gospel, a secret gnosis of salvation, transcribed at the dawn of the world from the source of all life, waiting to be rediscovered by a future generation of worthy initiates. For Enoch, then, knowledge of God's laws, both cosmic and moral, is the crucial element for salvation. And the final reward for the righteous is not just rest, but a deeper, more profound state of divine understanding. But there will be trials. And the greatest of these trials, the ultimate test of a fallen world, was the great flood. To conclude his testament, Enoch tells the story of the man chosen to navigate that cataclysm, the one in whom the final promise of survival would be vested: Noah. The book then comes full circle, ending its main narrative where the world's first great tragedy began. After detailing the sins of the watchers that necessitated the flood, it now introduces the man who will carry life through that very cataclysm. The text describes the miraculous birth of Noah. His father Lamech is struck with fear, for the child's appearance is extraordinary. His body was white as snow and red as the bloom of a rose, and the hair of his head was white as wool, and his eyes beautiful. When the baby opens his eyes, he illuminates the whole house like the sun. And upon being taken from the midwife, he opens his mouth and speaks to the Lord of Justice. Lamech fears he is not his son, but a child similar to the children of the angels of heaven. He seeks out Enoch, who confirms that Noah is indeed Lamech's son, but that he is part of a greater divine plan. Enoch reveals the prophecy of the coming judgment, a great destruction through a deluge, because of the sins committed by humanity. The final promise, however, is one of salvation for the righteous line. Enoch states that Noah and his 3 sons will be saved while all others perish. Noah's name itself signifies hope. For, as Enoch declares, he will be a remnant of you, the seed of a new humanity destined to repopulate a cleansed and broken world. And so the book's main narrative concludes with this promise of survival and renewal. But Enoch provides one last haunting vision, an epilogue that crystallizes the entire work's message into a single powerful image of the 2 eternal destinies. The book concludes with a final haunting epilogue, introduced as another book that Enoch wrote. It is a last vision that crystallizes the entire work's message into a single powerful image of the two eternal destinies. He sees a place like a cloud which could not be seen, and from its depths, a flame of a fire burning brightly. An angel explains this terrible vision. This place which thou seest, here are brought the souls of the sinners and of the revilers, and they will cry and lament in a void, empty place, and burn in a fire where there is no end. This is contrasted with the fate of the righteous, of those who loved God more than the world, and chastised their bodies for the sake of heaven. God declares, "And I will lead out in a shining light those who love my holy name, and will set each one on the throne of honor of his honor." The book's final parting image is of the sinners crying out as they see them as they shine, and they will go there where days and times are written for them. It is the ultimate vision of the full spectrum of divine justice. From the darkness of the fiery abyss to the brilliant light of the throne of honor. A final, powerful encouragement to choose a path of righteousness and to trust in the ultimate justice of a God who sees all and forgets nothing. So we are left with a profound paradox. A book that was lost to the canon, yet whose ideas became a secret blueprint for the religious imagination of the West. Its visions of a pre-existent Son of Man, of fallen angels, and a detailed afterlife were too potent to be contained. They flowed into the spiritual underground, shaping the language of faith for centuries to come. This is why, for psychological reasons, the suspicion that Enoch's messianic ideas were later Christian additions seems unjustified. As Carl Jung argues in answer to Job, one only has to consider what Yahweh's injustice, his downright immorality, must have meant to a devout thinker of that time. He notes that the Book of Enoch was an anticipation in the grand manner, a necessary evolution of the God image that arose organically from the spiritual and psychological pressures of the age. In view of this, Jung states, one cannot, with the best will in the world, see how Christianity is supposed to have burst upon world history as an absolute novelty. He concludes with a powerful assertion, if ever anything had been historically prepared and sustained and supported by the existing Weltanschauung, Christianity would be a classic example. In this light, the Book of Enoch is the crucial historical bridge that prepared the way for the Christian revelation. But perhaps the reason these visions have haunted us for millennia is that their power is more than just historical. They offer us a map, not only of the heavens, but of the inner cosmos. The fall of the Watchers can be seen as our fall into unconscious desire. The monstrous giants are our unintegrated shadows given form, and the glorious Son of Man is the archetype of the whole and integrated self that lies as a potential within each of us. Perhaps the most radical psychological reading of Enoch comes from Jung's challenging work, Answer to Job. Here he proposes that the book is a record of the evolution of the God image. Jung controversially suggests that the fallen angels were in some ways more progressive and more conscious than their father. Their transgression and the chaos it unleashed forced a crisis that compelled God to evolve. In Jung's view, God has really learnt something from experience and is setting about things more consciously than before. And what is the evidence for this divine transformation? It is the Book of Enoch itself. Whereas older prophets gave only vague hints about the divine court or the Son of Man, Jung writes that Enoch gives us clear and detailed information on these points. The creation of a complex four-part underworld for the dead, the revelation of a pre-existent Messiah, and the renewed memory of Sophia, or wisdom, are all for Jung proof of a God becoming more self-aware, more structured, and more conscious of his own inner complexity. In this interpretation, the Book of Enoch is the story of God's journey towards self-realization. This journey of the soul, from a fallen state to a redeemed one, can also be understood through the symbolic lens of alchemy. In his alchemical studies, Carl Jung describes the great work as a process beginning with the separatio, the separation of opposites, the dark, heavy, saturnine element from the bright, spiritual soul. After a difficult process of purification, a sacred union or conjunctio can occur with the long-living inner, or astral man, and what arises from this perfected union. Jung notes that the alchemist Paracelsus called this transformed state the enokdianus, which is the virtue or power of the everlasting man. This is the ultimate goal, achieved through the exaltation of both worlds, a perfect synthesis of spirit and matter. Seen this way, the entire Book of Enoch can be read as a grand alchemical formula. The world's corruption by the Watchers is the descent into the dark, saturnine state. The suffering and judgments are the painful purification. And the final glorious kingdom of the righteous is the achievement of the enokdianus, a state of spiritual gold, a springtime for the soul. This transformed state, the enokdianus, is more than a simple spiritual achievement. In the alchemical tradition, it represents the creation of the philosopher's stone itself. Jung clarifies that the alchemist sought to approximate the deathless original man, a perfected being to which Enoch belonged. The result of this successful approximation, he writes, is that the powers and attributes of the Homo Maximus flow like a helpful and healing stream into the earthly nature of the microcosmic mortal man. In this light, the legendary stone, the lapis philosophorum, is revealed to have names like elixir, panacea, and most tellingly, Salvator, or Saviour. The alchemical journey, therefore, is a process of realizing the Enoch within, a principle of healing and perfection that redeems the mortal soul. And this journey, whether we view it as historical or psychological, leads to one ultimate, illuminating truth. Beneath all the terror and judgment, the Book of Enoch is a testament to the law of the good. It is a passionate and tireless promise that in a universe governed by divine justice, chaos is temporary, and the arc of reality, however long and fraught with suffering, bends inexorably toward the light. To reveal these hidden truths from all points of view is the core mission of Irevelato, to see the full spectrum of a story, from its ancient roots to its timeless meaning. The Book of Enoch is a perfect testament to this work, a lost history, a map to the soul, and a profound vision of hope. Thank you for joining us on this journey of revelation. May you find order in the chaos, and may you always walk in the light of the good.